Hi, and welcome to Wrong Way. And today we're going to take a look at my 5 best electric unicycles, which are micromobility devices under $2,000. So let me tell you more about it. Wrong Way. And thanks to you, ChoochTech, for inspiring me to make better video titles. Anyways, there's a lot of EUCs on the market currently, and especially around the $2,000 mark, €2,000 mark, I see a lot of competition. And you guys always ask me, should I get this or should I get this? And my answer is always, what do you want? What are your needs? And this is why in this video I'm not going to tell you a ranking of what is the best, like number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. I'm going to tell you what might be the best solution for you and for your use case. Anyhow, all of these EUCs are available for sale at My eWheel. This is the site for Europe. You can use the Wrong Way code to get a 5% discount. I also do get a kickback from that. And if you want to order in the US, there's also links to eWheels and UCO. Without further ado, let's get into it. Now, if you have never seen an electric unicycle, which I doubt if you're subscribed to the channel, it's a device which is powered by an electric motor with batteries, a controller, and you accelerate by leaning forward, you decelerate or brake by leaning back. It's powered by a gyroscope. You turn by leaning your body to the sides. And it's the most portable device you can get around the city, and at the same time, in this size, in my eyes, it's the most capable. So let's start with my first recommendation, and I will go from cheapest to most expensive on the list. And number 1 on the list is none other than the Begode or GotWay Nikola Plus 100-volt electric unicycle. And the Begode Nikola Plus has the title of the best waterproofed wheel out of the box and the best performance value wheel. I've ridden the GotWay Nikola for a long time. I've put around 6,000–7,000 kilometers on several wheels in the shell. Now I'm going to tell you all the positive things about this EUC, and then I'm gonna list the negatives. So the first upside I have here on my list is that obviously it has a very good waterproofing out of the box. There aren't many openings on the wheel. Since the trolley handle is outside, it doesn't connect to the inner shell of the wheel, and there's really no entry point for water and other particles into the wheel. All of the GotWay Nikolas I've opened were very, very clean inside. So if you're riding this wheel, you are not really scared of rain. Only thing I would do is put a little tape over the power button, since the power button might be vulnerable to a little rain. The next good thing is that out of the box, you don't really need many accessories for this wheel. It has a decent mud guard, it has a decent lighting, well, maybe apart from the taillight. You might want to get a better taillight. But it has a trolley handle, the shell is also really robust, it's another plus side. So if you get a GotWay Nikola, you don't really need to buy any accessories. Okay, maybe it's worth to get an additional light on your helmet, like my Olight RN800. Another good aspect of the GotWay Nikola is that it's very fast. It can reach speeds of 65 kilometers an hour. However, I would advise you to go maybe 55, 60, depending on your battery state. It's not the fastest wheel out there, but in terms of 16-inch wheels currently available on the market, it is the fastest. It also accelerates really nicely, and off the line it can beat many electric scooters with dual motor drive. Out of the box it also has a pretty fast charger which charges the wheel up in around 5 hours from 0 to 100%, and you can buy also an accessory third-party charger, a quick charger, which will top up the wheel in around 3 hours. I would say that is the reasonable limit on this wheel. It can also climb up to 35-degree inclines, so in day-to-day use you probably don't need much more. However, there are wheels which can do more than that, and we'll move on to that a bit later in the video. It also has very good features. It has a speaker, it has a good trolley handle, maybe not the best because it doesn't lock in place. However, it's really good for just going grocery shopping and trolling the wheel around. And there's also a voltage meter on the side, so you can check your battery while stationary. While you're riding, it's not really easy to do that. You would have to check on your phone with the app. It also has a lift switch, so it's easy to carry the wheel up and down the set of stairs without engaging the motor. And it also has RGB on the side with several presets. And this RGB also has a special function that when you brake, the whole side panel of the wheel turns red. Really neat. It's a very nimble and agile wheel thanks to the small wheel and tire diameter, and it's also really zippy. It likes to take turns. It's a great wheel, especially under 40-50 kilometers an hour, because it's just so fun to ride. Apart from that, Begode wheels do tend to be really easy to service, and it's really easy to change out a unit, a battery pack, the motherboard. But only if you need to. This wheel is actually very little maintenance. Probably the only thing you'll need to do is change the tire every 5,000 or 6,000 kilometers. If you ride really hardcore, maybe less. The GotWay Nikola has also a pretty good range of around 70 kilometers. Could be above, could be a little below. I think that the wheel is overall a pretty long range wheel. And the last upside I have on this list is a very strong shell. My Nikola that I had, 84 volt, took a lot of tumbles down the hill, and I know that the Nikola, because of its like oval shape, can take a really hard beating without getting broken. Now we move on to the negatives. The first one is the lights are a bit antiquated, especially the tail light is not really visible at night. Probably you will need to get an accessory for that. And the front light, while it's good, it definitely could be better. I would really like to see a better set of lights in the front to make your night commutes safer. Another downside is that because the tire is very wide, 3 inches, but yet the diameter is not that big, it tends to be prone to a bit of train tracking. If you don't know what train tracking is, basically the wheel follows lines that are in the road. For example, if the road is a bit uneven, then it will steer you off in one or the other direction. So you will need to take that into account. You can also lower this effect by lowering the pressure of the tire. 27 or 28 psi for a 80 kilogram rider weight. But then you have to also really watch out for curbs and bigger potholes. Another downside is that it's rather a bulky and big wheel for the performance it offers, and it also has a noisy charger. These chargers do tend to work well, but sometimes they also do break, and then the fan is pretty loud and it's getting a bit annoying. And the last downside is a pretty big one, as Begode wheels don't have as good of a safety tech in their wheels. Now they're working on it, they are now including fuses in their wheels, but for example the charge port has still a very big current, so if water gets in there it might be possible to turn off the motor, and it also lacks a smart BMS system like for example the InMotion wheels. However, their motherboards are really powerful, so it's a very low chance to fry the motherboard in terms of performance riding, and this is a thing that might happen on other less powerful wheels. Okay, now let's move to number 4, which is the Begode RS19. The Begode RS19 has the title of Best Performance Wheel under $2,000, and it's, I think, very, very well deserved. So now let me list up the positives about this wheel. Number 1, it has insane performance. It accelerates insanely, and if you've ever seen a video by Rolls, this thing is just so quick. The top speed is around 75 kilometers an hour. That's where the beeps kick in, but you can probably push it a little harder, which I wouldn't advise. So with a full battery, probably around 70 to 70 something is a safe top speed. And the acceleration is insane. You have also 2 models to choose from, a high speed version and a high torque version. So if you are heavier, I would advise you to take the high torque version, which will also make the wheel run cooler. And if you like a lot of off-roading, then high torque would be probably the best option for you. If you're, however, a speed junkie and top end speed is all that you want, get the HS. And probably also the HS will be the wheel that has a lesser range. The range in the Begode RS really depends on the riding style, because whilst you might drain it in 40 or maybe 50 kilometers with a really aggressive riding on the HS, you can also bring it up to 70 kilometers if you ride a bit more carefully. So whilst you can drain it really quickly, it also can give you pretty decent range. The wheel also charges really quickly, just as the GotWay Nikola Plus, at around 5 hours with a fan charger. However, it has 2 charge ports, so you can connect 2 of those, which will decrease the time to 3 hours. If you take a third-party charger, you can even decrease it down to 2 hours. So really fast charging in the Begode RS. Thanks to the hollow motor design, the power delivery is also really smooth. The wheel also has pretty great features, and it's actually packed with features. Starting from a trolley handle in the back, which needs some getting used to. It's not the best on the market, but I don't think it's also the worst one. It doesn't have a locking button, so that's a bit of a bummer. It has very decent lighting, front and rear, actually nothing to add here. And with the RGB that is now available on these wheels, the strips in the front and the back, is a very, very visible wheel in the night. It also has a lift switch and also an optional seat. So if seated riding is something for you, it's really easy to buy an additional seat for the RS19. Just as the Nikola Plus, it's a wheel which is really easy to service. Recently, a friend of mine also changed the bearings on a RS19 at home. So it's a very, very serviceable wheel in terms of pretty much every component. The next upside is that it's very portable. However, it's not the lightest wheel at around 28 kilograms. But the overall footprint is really small. So for this package, this little small package, you do get a lot of performance. The great thing about the new 2021 RS19s is also that there's a display, and this display can show you several things from the odometer, speed, battery in 5 bars, not that accurate, and also the temperature of the motherboard. However, this display is only useful in the night or in overcast weather. In broad sunlight, it's very difficult to see what is on this display. Now let's move on to the negatives. The first one is it's very, very poorly waterproofed. And if you want to ever ride a RS19 in the rain, you need to take it apart and put silicone basically everywhere. Now I've opened up many of MSX's, MSP's, RS19s, and they always do need to have a little bit of love in order to make them waterproof. So out of the box, I wouldn't ride it definitely in the rain. The next downside is hit or miss quality. For example, in my RS19, which I had for testing, the display was sealed, however the charge port wasn't. So you really need to check out the wheel if you want to ride in suboptimal conditions to not destroy it right away, and especially the electronics. I also think it's a pretty high maintenance wheel, so you need to check on it every, 500,000 kilometers. And potentially it also might have issues with the bearings. Now, the hollow motor design came in last year in the V11, the Begode wheels, and it turned out to be quite a bit of a struggle in terms of quality. Now, these issues do get sorted over time, but it's also a bit of a hit or miss if your wheel will be bulletproof or not. The GotWay Nikola is definitely more bulletproof than the RS. At high speed, you also might get some speed wobbles with the RS. It's something you can get used to and you can control it. However, it might throw you off if you're the first time on the wheel. What helps to decrease these speed wobbles is just to lower down your pressure. Around 28 or 30 psi for an 80 kilogram rider is optimal in my eyes. The next downside is that the RS19 also needs quite a bit of accessories to make it complete. First of all, it does come sometimes with a small mud guard in the rear, which is in my eyes a bit too small. So you either need to buy some 3D printed accessory or you need to make one out of a plastic bottle with tape. You also do need to have either a fiberglass shell or a front bumper, because the shell cracks very easily even on a low speed crash. So if you have a crash even at 15-20 kilometers an hour, there's a high chance you might damage the shell just because the wheel falls flat on its face. The next downside is that the charger is noisy, if that's something you care about, just like the Nikola Plus. And just like the Nikola Plus, it also is a bit lacking at the safety tech. And whilst Begode has the fuse now in their wheels and they added a motherboard cover, the seal is still pretty bad and there's big holes and gaps in the trolley handle area where water can ingress. But other than that, if you want the best performance wheel in good weather, and if you want to have a great performance wheel for off-road riding with a big diameter wheel and big range, big acceleration, I think you can't go wrong with the Begode RS. The next wheel on this list is none other than the Kingsong 16X. And the title is The Best Urban Commuter. Let me explain by first telling you all of the upsides. Number one, it has a very big range, and in my range test it got 80 kilometers, and this is pretty much the biggest range of a wheel I got in this price range. The 16X costs around 1900 euros, so a bit more expensive than the RS, but actually not that much. It also has great features, including lights with low beams and high beams that also adjust to your speed, and they turn on automatically if it's dark. I, however, turn off this feature because it's very annoying. Sometimes it just turns on and off by itself. It also has RGB front and back, which makes the wheel really visible. And a bonus to this RGB system is that it also shows you the battery state when you're stationary. It also has one of the leading best trolley handles on the market with a very, very tall trolley handle, and it also includes a lift switch built in. It also has speakers which are, in my eyes, not the best quality. It has many speakers inside, but it's still a bit muffled. There's also a twin charge port, and you can also buy an optional seat for seated riding. So it's fully loaded in terms of features. The next upside is it pretty much doesn't need any accessories at all. Both the front lights and tail lights are pretty decent. Maybe I would add an additional tail light on your helmet just to make you a bit more visible, but other than that, you pretty much don't need anything. There's also a mud guard, which helps reduce mud spraying on your feet and on your back. The wheel also has very good waterproofing. You don't need to be too afraid to go in the rain. However, I would cover up the speaker and some other areas of the wheel which you might find on forums in order to make it fully waterproof. There's also lots of torque on this wheel, and this wheel can climb 40 degrees of an incline, one of the few wheels which can do that. Another wheel which can do that, I forgot to mention it before, is the RS. The wheel also has great stability, and the batteries are laid out really neatly, giving you a great balance. It's really easy to ride with this wheel very slowly, and tied to stability is also the off-road performance. And dude, the 16X is really awesome off-road. The pedals stay flat, and even if you go into turns and you have a lot of rattling, going up and down, jumping, the 16X doesn't even budge. It's a great wheel for taking it off-road. Another good side is that it's very portable and light. It's very easy to take into a car or put it under the seat if you're in a train. And it also has a silent charger, which is pretty cool. And the last upside is that it has pretty good battery safety tech, better than the Begode wheels. So if safety of your battery unit and your motherboard is something you care about, then maybe it's worth considering a Kingsong 16X. Now let's move on to the downside. And the first one on my list is that maximum speed is just 50 kilometers an hour. Now, if you're not a speedy rider, then, well, that's not really important. But an important thing is not to push the 16X too strongly over 40 or 45 kilometers an hour, because it might be possible to cut out on this wheel. 50 kilometers an hour is a good speed. However, it's always better to have headroom. So I feel a lot safer going this speed on the Nikola or on the RS than on the 16X. If speed is not important to you though, then, well, this point is also not important to you. The next thing is that potentially the water can ingress through the speaker and the front light unit. Now, I heard that these issues have been solved. However, I'm not really sure if that's 100% the case. It's also a pretty rattly wheel. So it is smooth, going maybe over 5-10 kilometers, but if you accelerate really strongly or brake, it turns to just rattle. And over a while, it also just starts to rattle, just like Taju's wheel. Yeah. Taju has a 16X. So if really the smoothest ride is something that's important to you, then maybe not 16X. The next thing is also train tracking. So just like the Begode Nikola, it tends to follow around train tracking. It tends to steer you off in various directions depending on the road surface or road condition you're on. To make this issue go away, just lower your tire pressure. And the last thing is that a stock charging speed of 9 hours or 10 hours is pretty slow in today's standards. And if you want to go faster, you can charge it at 4.5 hours with twin chargers, which is the second charger as an accessory, or maybe you can even charge it with 3 hours with a third-party accessory. However, stock charging speed is rather slow compared to the competition. But in total, the 16X is a very bulletproof wheel. It's really awesome. Lots of couriers and food deliveries are also using the 16X. It's really portable, bulletproof pretty much. And I think that if you purchase a Kingsong 16X, you won't be disappointed. And now we are moving into the $2,000 or €2,000 category. And this is the Kingsong S18. And I have a bit of a turmoil relationship with this wheel because initially I didn't like it that much. I wasn't recommending it. However, after a while, it turned out to be not that bad after all. So if you don't know, the Kingsong S18 is the first suspension wheel that Kingsong came out with, and it is very polarizing because it's pretty expensive but doesn't give you that much performance in terms of top speed, range and acceleration. However, it has a lot of upsides, as I found out later. And the title that I have here is Most Miles Per Mile. First upside is it has amazing suspension performance, and basically the Kingsong S18 has a damper in the rear and it has basically the best suspension system currently available on the EUC market. It's very comfortable, you can adjust it, you can adjust the dampening, and for going off-road, for going downstairs, for a very poor quality road, you actually can't really go better than the Kingsong S18. Another bonus is that it also has pretty good features, a pretty tall trolley handle, it's a lift mode which is a bit of hit or miss, I'll tell you about that later, and the lighting is also really good, including front low beams and high beams, and a light sensor just like the 16X, and a pretty decent taillight. Another upside is that you pretty much don't need any accessories for it. I just ride mine bare bones, well, except for the pedals, which I'll also talk about later. It also has a built-in mud guard, which helps keep your pants and feet dry when you ride over wet terrain. The next point is that it's very zippy and agile, and probably amongst all of these wheels, it's the lightest feeling wheel that I know. It's not the lightest one, weighing around 24-25 kilograms, but it feels so zippy and agile. It's very easy to accelerate with it, it's awesome to turn with it, and you have a lot of fun with the ride. And the last upside is it's a pretty good stock charging experience with a 6-hour charging time. However, it doesn't have any dual charge ports, and I wouldn't really advise to charge this battery up faster than with the stock charger. Now we move on to the downsides. And the first one is it's pretty big for its capabilities. It has a pretty small battery, but it still has a pretty big footprint. So if that is something of importance to you, then maybe better not get the S18. It also has a very small range, and once I drained the battery in like 45 kilometers, now you can get a longer range out of this wheel, but you would need to ride really slowly. So with its 1100 watt-hour battery, you can't really go fast. And connected to that small battery, this EUC has huge battery sags. And if you don't know what battery sags is, basically the motor is using a lot of power from the battery, and the battery doesn't have that much headroom to give you. So for example, once if I went on the jump and I over torqued the wheel, so I was just leaning too strongly, it just turned off and was off for half a day until I somehow brought it back to life by plugging a charger in. Maybe the battery management system needed a break, I don't know. However, this wheel is not designed for fast acceleration and very strong hill climbs. It has some safety integrated to prevent a cutoff. For example, when I was accelerating to an acceleration test, it dipped the pedals on me at some point, but it didn't cut out, which is nice. But in terms of performance and range, it's really not the best wheel out there. It feels zippy, it feels really nice, but in terms of hill climbs, maybe like 30 degrees, 35 is possible, but I have the S18 now for around, I don't know, 700 kilometers, and it beeps at me already a lot of times when doing pretty strong inclines. I also wouldn't ride this wheel faster than 40 kilometers an hour, so that's also a downside. In terms of part of the features, namely the lift switch, it's not really the best. I turned it off, I just turn off the wheel because the button is really close to the trolley handle, and then I lift it up. There is no really well usable battery indicator. You have to just sort of like lean down and look just underneath or over the taillight, and it also has no speaker. Just like the 16X, it's also pretty rattly, especially at low speed. And it has also pretty narrow stock footplates compared to the competition. The Kingsong S18 also doesn't have the strongest shell. The plastic parts do hold up pretty well on top. However, there are some bottom brackets for the pedal hangers, which I damaged in my wheel pretty quickly. and they're really bent, and probably I will need to buy new ones. I also did change my foot plates to Nikola ones because they also are spiked and just a tad bigger. The padding is also just a bit of a hit and miss. I love the fact that it has pads on the bottom where your shoes are, where your feet are, which makes jumping easier, but the top padding is just sometimes too uncomfortable, and I just need to take a day off riding the S18 because I'm just tired of this top padding. But if you want the most nimble, most fun experience, if your city includes a lot of potholes and riding without suspension would be really tiring for you, if you want a wheel to go just off-road and on bumps, this is probably the most comfortable and safest solution for that. If you're a heavier rider though, and you want to get performance and a lot of bang for your buck and acceleration and range, then better not get the Kingsong S18. And tied with the Kingsong S18 in terms of price is the InMotion V11. And the title here is the best feature-rich wheel. So InMotion V11 is the first big wheel by this company. It's a 18-inch wheel, or 19, however you call it. And it's the first wheel also by this company that has integrated suspension. However, it's a different set of suspension than the S18. It has two pistons, which is the ear suspension on this wheel, and it has a lot more unsprung weight, so the suspension isn't as good as the S18. However, it's still really, really decent and definitely better than the lack of suspension. So let's move on to the upside. I think that the first greatest thing is that it has amazing lighting, and the beam of the front light on the InMotion is just really, really awesome. You really don't need much more in terms of riding in the night. And also the taillight is really bright, and as InMotion says, motorcycle grade. The next upside is that the ride is really, really comfortable. It has a big wheel, big diameter, and it also has suspension, making the ride just really, really comfy and chill. Another upside is that the performance is pretty good, not really amazing, but it does all the things well in terms of acceleration. Hill climbing, I even went up 40 degrees. However, this was really the maximum of this wheel. 35 degrees is the reasonable limit to the InMotion V11. It has a 1500 watt-hour battery, and the range is around 70 kilometers. So pretty decent in terms of its pricing, and it also has great features because it has a trolley handle that locks in place, very, very comfortable, a lift switch, mud guards, a twin charge ports, and a very neat battery indicator in the front, and an optional seat you can buy. The app functionality in InMotion wheels is also really great. You can adjust a lot of things, including a voice recorded message that you can record with your voice that the wheel will tell you upon startup. Another good thing about the V11 is that it pretty much doesn't need any accessories. Just get the wheel, get it out of the box, and that's it. That's pretty good. And it also has a silent charger if that's something you're into. The waterproofing on this wheel is also really great, having a IP certification, and it's also a great seated ride. If you like seated riding, probably V11 will be the most comfortable experience here. However, the V11 doesn't consist of only upsides, so now let me tell you the downside. First of all, it's pretty big and bulky. It's rather a big wheel, and at 28 kilograms, it's rather heavy. It's, in my eyes, a very not thrilling ride. Like, it doesn't deliver you the same amount of joy and fun and acceleration and turning as the S18 or the RSs or the Nikola. When I had the V11 for around 2,200 kilometers, after a while, the wheel just got really stale to me. The next downside is that potentially you might have issues with the hollow motor, just like the RS. And I heard that also some issues with the motherboard being not strong enough, especially if you do crazy stuff like going downstairs, etc. It's also pretty difficult to service, having lots of screws and lots of parts that might break if you're riding on the wheel. And it's also, in my eyes, not the strongest shell. And the last part is that the stock charging is rather slow at around 8 hours. However, with 2 chargers, you'll be able to charge it in 4 hours, which is a pretty good result. So these are the 5 best wheels, or the 5 best wheels for each category in my eyes, under $2,000. So if you agree with my points, comment below. If you disagree, you can also comment below, like the video, and if you're still here, subscribe to see more content like this. I'll see you in the next video. See you soon. Oh, this will be a lot of editing.